Hello, today is a good day. I have good days and I have rough days. I'm doing a short series on grief, walking through the grief process in a healthy way and depending on God through the entire process. And actually, I guess I could take my glasses off. I feel like I'm being impersonal, leaving my glasses on. Okay, so it's chilly here in Tennessee. We got our first freeze last night, so I've got my cozy jacket on. And anyways, so this is video 3 on the series that I'm doing on grief. So just a quick recap for if you haven't seen any of my other videos. I would encourage you to go watch video 1 and video 2. Some of my videos are short and some are long. If there's a longer one, what I have found that helps me, sometimes I can't sit still through a 40-minute video, but if it's something that I really need to hear in that season or that's going to be really helpful to me, what I do is I'll watch half the video one day and then I'll come back to it in a day or two the next time I have another chunk of time, or sometimes I'll split it up in 3 or 4 sessions. So I've learned that helps me. Or if I'm just feeling fidgety and I'm like, I can't watch a 40-minute video, so I watch 10 minutes here and there throughout that week, but I just make sure that I go back. So that's just a tip. Some of my videos can get lengthy, but if it's something that is going to be helpful for you, I would encourage you to break it up and hear the whole thing and hear the word of the Lord, because I know he's offering healing and he's offering his power and pouring out his spirit on people, and I don't want anyone to miss that. So if the Lord has sent you here, well, I would say, I guess, if you're here watching this video, my belief is that the Lord has sent you here. It's not by accident. It's not by coincidence. So make it a priority and receive what the Lord has for you through these. Okay, so my dad passed away from earth and entered eternity with the Lord around August 19th. Today is October 18th, so almost 2 months since that happened, and the Lord had put it on my heart to share the grief process out loud with other people, because so many people are going through the grief process, whether it's not just for the death of a loved one, but anything that we're grieving, any sort of loss, any change that makes us feel grief. So I had seen this little thing that came across on my Facebook feed just a few days after I had got the news about my dad, and it said, some of us grieve in public in order to help those who grieve in private. And the Lord told me, I want you to do that through this process. And so I've just been walking through the grieving process and depending on the Lord and experiencing everything that I'm experiencing and sharing it here with you guys as the Lord leads me. I think there will be a handful of videos, not too many, but I think it's good, and I'm thankful, and I just hope that this helps you, and I just pray that the Lord would open everyone's eyes and ears to receive what His Spirit is speaking to each person individually, that those things would stick, and I bind every plan of the enemy to steal this stuff from the listeners in the name of Jesus, that these seeds of wisdom and faith and truth would be planted deep within you, and that nobody and nothing could steal them from you, that the Lord would bring healing and deliverance and wholeness to everybody listening in Jesus' name. So the thing that really has been jumping out at me to share in this video is about self-care and how important it is through the grieving process. And everybody is going to hear this from a different point of view, because some people, before your loss, you've been really good at self-care. And then some people, you've never been good at self-care. So this might be your first time delving into what self-care looks like. And I'd actually call it godly self-love and godly self-care. The opposite of those would be self-love equaling narcissism and selfishness. Those are the ungodly ways, but there are godly ways that we are to love ourselves and care for ourselves, because our body, the Lord tells us in the Bible, is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And of course, He wouldn't want us to hate ourselves or harm ourselves or not take care of ourselves. And if we don't love ourselves in that godly way, how can we possibly love other people? So I'm a big proponent about that. I've heard Christians say the Bible never says to love yourself. Well, there are actually scriptures. I don't have them today because I'm not like delivering a message. Well, I guess I kind of am, but in a little bit different context. But I didn't go look up scriptures, but there are scriptures throughout the Word that show us we are to love ourselves the way that Jesus does and in a godly way. So some of the things that popped out to me through the past few weeks about self-care are that self-care, when you're going through grief, most likely in many circumstances is going to look a lot different than self-care has looked in your life previously. So maybe before grief, your self-care was like, taking your boat out to the lake and having a relaxing day, or getting highlights in your hair, or riding your ATV at the dunes. Those could have been self-care strategies that you used to put into place. But in the grieving process, a lot of times we don't have the energy to do those sorts of things, or we don't have the desire to do those sorts of things because we're in a different season. And so what I wanted to say is, sometimes people who are on the outside, well, let me rewind. So what I want to say about that is, it's okay for your self-care to look different in different seasons. So where you used to maybe want to go do adventurous things or outgoing things, or maybe you used to like to go socialize as a part of your self-care, but now you just kind of want to be a cocoon at your own home, and now you just want to do more relaxing, quieter things. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And some people who are on the outside looking in at your life right now, probably with good intentions, but it could be an error when they're looking out and saying, oh, you need to be around people, or you need to get out and socialize, or you need to do the things that you love to do, or whatever. If they haven't walked through grief in the way that you're walking through it right now, their advice could actually be wrong at this point in time. So it depends on what's going on inside of you. So what I keep saying and what I keep hearing the Lord say is, get really good at recognizing what's going on inside of you. What are your motives for what you're doing and what you're not doing? So just because someone says that maybe it's unhealthy that you're not going to the party, or you're not, doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. Now, sometimes people on the outside looking in can see things, blind spots that we can't see. So take all of that into account, pray about it, and say, Lord, what should I do? Should I go? Is it okay to stay home? Am I staying home to, for an unhealthy reason? Like, just bring everything to the Lord. He's not going to lead you astray. He's not going to give you bad advice. And you don't need to say something rude to the person giving you advice, because I'm sure they have good intentions, but you can just let them know. Well, you don't have to give them an answer at all, but you can, if you do talk about it, don't bash them or lash out at them in anger, which is really easy to do in the grief process. But don't be mad at them. I'm sure they love you and they're trying to help you, and we have all offered bad advice at some point or another, myself included. But we need to be gracious with one another, and we need to see where a person's heart is. So even if they say something like, oh, you should be over your grief by now, or something like that, what keeps coming to my mind is when Jesus I can't remember at this very moment if it was when I think it was when he was on the cross and he said, Lord, forgive them, they know not what they do. The Lord keeps bringing that to my mind when somebody comes against me in a way that feels hurtful to me. The Lord has reminded me to pray for that person, and then also examine their motives. Do they not know what they're doing? Do they not realize, if this person loves me, if they knew what they were doing was hurting me, they probably wouldn't do it. So it helps me to approach things differently and in love, rather than just getting offended and going off on them or whatever. Okay, so that was kind of a rabbit trail, but I guess somebody probably needs to hear that. Okay, so self-care at this time might look a lot different. So some of my self-care things that I've been doing are lighting a candle. That's been bringing me peace and solace. Feeling the sun on my skin. So I take a chair and I'll go sit it out in a sunny spot in my yard. The other day, my husband actually took the car, we have an SUV, and he backed it up, opened up the back, and the sun was coming in on the back. And so we put blankets and pillows out there, and we just laid there and read some news, read some books. I think each of us took different turns taking a nap, and we just hung out. Like, you would think we were hanging out on the beach relaxing. It was peaceful and it was quiet, and I didn't have to really do anything. It was healing though, and it was self-care. Also, the next thing was during this season, and also knowing that there will probably be a time where you'll return to doing those other self-care things that you've done in the past, or maybe your priorities have changed and you'll pick up some different self-care things and leave those things in the past. It's okay. It's a different season, and seasons don't last forever. So this too shall pass. Enjoying different things. And also in the grieving process, a lot of times it's hard to enjoy things the way that we have previously. So maybe you're not even going to find something that you necessarily enjoy right now, but if it allows you to calm your mind and it allows you to relax and be still, then that's a good thing. And that means, I would say, forward progress in your healing. The other thing is setting down responsibilities and commitments for a season. So again, this is a season, and you want to heal well, and you want to become whole, so that when it's time to go into your next season, you're healthy and whole, and you can do the things that you need to do, that you want to do, that God wants you to do. So during this season, some of us have like a voice inside, or maybe people around us telling us like, you know, we need to keep going. We need to keep doing the things that we always do. Or if we have responsibilities, maybe they're volunteering at the church, or you know, commitments. I don't know, that you volunteer somewhere in the community, or you, whatever it is. If there are things that you can cut out for a season, and you feel the need to do that, I say go for it. There's things that I've needed to cut out and say, I don't have energy, I don't have strength, and I of course I prayed about them first, like, Lord, is it okay to take these out, because I don't want to drop them and just drive myself down into a deep hole of depression and cut everything out of my life. But the Lord has very clearly shown me that this is a season of rest and quiet and peace and being still, and I don't owe anybody anything of my time and commitment while I need to be healing and becoming whole. And I'm going to be better in the things that I do in the future if I do this healing and grieving process well, and get myself leaning on the Lord, of course, and any other things that I need to a better place. The next thing was spending less time in public is definitely okay. That's part of the healing process. Like, we're not going to feel like being, you know, well, not every single person, but many of us, we're not going to feel like going out and being social. Like, we're not going to feel like for me right now, there's a midweek service at this really big church, and it's a good service, and I like going there, but I haven't felt like going there lately. It feels nerve-wracking for me to go there right now. Now, there's a small church locally, a smaller building, fewer people, and this is the second week in a row, so I've gone to church. So I'm 2 months in, and I've only gone to church for the past 2 weeks. Before that, I wasn't up to it, and it wasn't like I had left the Lord. It wasn't like I wasn't worshiping Him. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I had stopped being a Christian, but I needed to rest. And so the small church has felt comfortable for me to go. The big one, just something about it, it just feels like I'm too exposed, and I'm not ready for that yet. So there's something about it, and that's okay. You don't have to force yourself to do things. If it's not harming you, and if you pray about it and it's fine, it's okay. Lay those things down, and you don't have to force yourself to go and participate in things that you have before, because in the season to come, when you feel better about it and when you're stronger, and the Lord's going to lead you to where you need to be and when. So don't be harsh with yourself. Or some people, the process is going to take longer than it takes others, and that's okay. Don't compare yourself or let someone else tell you when it's the right time. You listen to the Lord, and you listen to what your needs are in a good, upright, healthy way, and He'll lead you in the way. The other one is crying in public is okay. I mean, some days, like I said, like, we're not going to want to go public places. That's okay. But don't let yourself, gosh, how do I say this? So so church, like I said, I've gone for the past 2 weeks. I know that there's going to be things that He either says or during worship. See, I'm talking about it's making me cry. I knew in this small church, I knew I'm going to cry there, and it's okay. And so I already went there knowing it's okay to cry in public. I don't need to be ashamed of my tears. I don't need to be embarrassed. And so both weeks, something made me cry. And some of it was crying because it would remind me of my dad, and I would cry because I would miss him, or I would wish that he could hear the service, or something like this last week. The pastor was actually talking about passing on to eternity and God's plan for that. That wasn't the whole sermon. It was just this little side note right in the beginning. Kind of went off on a tangent. He said so himself, but it wasn't a tangent. We know that was prepared specifically for me and others who needed to hear it. And I cried because I was like, wow, Lord, thank you so much that you spoke that out, in a service that wasn't even talking about death and dying. Like, he just had that. And so then it was tears of like a gratefulness. And so different tears are going to come out at different times. If you feel like going somewhere, if you feel good enough or strong enough or the desire to go somewhere, and the only thing holding you back is you're like, oh, what if I cry? Go and cry right through it. I was in the grocery store, like I just went to the store. I haven't been going to the store often at all, but recently I've gone a few times, and I went into the grocery store and I'm walking through knowing full well, okay, I might cry in the grocery store, that's okay. And sometimes it does make other people uncomfortable. Oh, well, I mean, sometimes, like, we can make people uncomfortable in all kinds of situations, things we say, things we do, the way we look. Like, if they're uncomfortable, it's okay. Oh, well, you don't need to be a jerk about it, but don't let that stifle you worried about what other people are going to think about you or how it's going to make them feel if you cry. There's nothing wrong with crying. I was in the grocery store and I was just walking through, and I saw this guy like right around my dad's age and kind of his same stature walk by. My eyes just welled up with tears because I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sad. I miss my dad. My dad's not gonna, I'm never gonna get to go to the grocery store with my dad. And I just had this flood of emotion and I cried. And then I walked and my eyes cleared up, and then I went, and the weather's getting cold here, and I like to eat this Mexican soup in the cold weather menudo. So I'm walking through and I see it. I didn't go to get it, but I saw it on the aisle and I was like, oh, this is perfect weather for that. And then my next thought was, when we were little and we would go out to eat, my dad would like to order that. And I started to reach for the can, and I was like, wow, I can't pick up this can because I'm crying, and that's okay. But if I pick up the can, I'm going to cry for the rest of the time and not be able to calm down. And that's okay. I'm not embarrassed about it, but I need to be able to walk through the register. But I just thought my tears would be so many that I wouldn't be able to recover if I had that can of soup in my hand. So I didn't pick it up. And then my next thought was, I can't even eat this soup because if I take this soup home right now and cook it and I smell it, I'm not even going to be able to eat it because I'm going to cry so much. So I'm going to have this bowl of soup and I'm going to cry and I'm just going to have to throw it away. So I didn't get the can of soup and I cried as I walked down the aisle. And that's okay. Things like that are going to happen. It's part of the process. And we need to normalize crying. Like, okay, there's some places, situations, I'm not where we're going to, not go if we're going to cry the entire time. Like, we're not going to go to a wedding and sit in the front seat and cry loudly the entire time and direct all the attention to us. But there's a balance there, is what I'm trying to say. And emotions are not bad. Okay, the other thing is, during this time, it takes a lot out of our bodies, and I talked about that in my first video about the toll on our bodies. And I'm having some really good days, but I've had some really hard days where again, 2 months out, I just need to sleep all day long, or I can do one load of laundry and then that's all the energy I have for the day and I can't do anything else. But then I've had some really good days where I can do stuff, or I want to go do something fun or whatever. And so it teeters, and it's like a roller coaster. Every day is different, and there's different triggers and different thoughts and different memories that come up. And so be patient with yourself and surround yourself with people who are patient with you. But what I was going to say is it does take a lot out of us physically, and so I would highly recommend doing supplements at this point. Like, some people maybe would just do like a vitamin, like a multivitamin. For me, myself, I like to supplement with vitamin D, omega 369, B12, and magnesium. Those are some of the big vitamins and minerals that support our system to fight against depression, lethargy, low energy. I supplement those anyways. I've shared a little how I have had like a lifelong struggle with depression, anxiety. I mean, at one point, I wrote down what the doctor said. At one point, I was receiving treatment for my depression, and the doctors told me I had treatment-resistant depression. So basically there was nothing else they could do to help me. And that was it. And they told me there was one other thing I could try, and it was actually getting my brain shocked. And I remember leaving that place, and I was deflated. I was already depressed. I was there because I needed help with depression. Like, I couldn't get out of bed. I was like melting into my bed, and they were like, sorry, we can't help you. And talk about depressing. I've actually seen people who have had that same diagnosis of treatment resistant depression who have gone on to kill themselves. I mean, how depressing and giving of hopelessness is that diagnosis. And it makes me angry, having been through what I've been through, and then I see people who go and they end their lives because they're hopeless. And I was hopeless like that. And I was desperate, and I went to the only doctor around that was offering that shock brain treatment at the time. And I was a shell of a person. I can like see myself at this time. I was a shell of a person, and I just thought this was my last. And the doctor told me, they confirmed this was my last, try at treatment, my last try at living, at life. And I went in there, and my mom had to take me. I couldn't drive. I couldn't really do anything for myself at that point. I really was just a shadow of myself. And they denied the treatment because my insurance wouldn't cover it, and I didn't have the cash to pay for it. And I just remember leaving there thinking, wow, my life is over. I'm never going to be a useful person to my family or to society. Like, what's the use? And yes, I was feeling suicidal and completely hopeless. So I share that to tell you guys, I had years on antidepressants. I had years on anxiety medication. I had years on medications that are supposed to, control your mood. But after all of those things, it was like some things would help for a little while, but they all eventually failed. I got this diagnosis. Everyone said they couldn't help me, and it seemed that life was over for me. And then, of course, the enemy was coming and telling me, yes, I was useless, and I was no good, and I was a burden on my family, and I should just end it all. But through prayer and through walking with the Lord and through reading the word and getting strengthened spiritually, through depending on the Lord to help me to get sin out of my life, getting off all those medications, those prescription medications, and the Lord was just guiding me through this process, and He was showing me that I needed to be doing vitamins and supplements that would be boosting my immunity and boosting the system inside that He created. But there's all sorts of reasons why our bodies don't work the right way. Either we're not getting, those things from our food, or the soil's depleted, so the right supplements are not in them, or our body is having a problem, absorbing them. There's all kinds of different reasons. But I walked on the pathway of I needed to find an alternative because everything else wasn't working. Even the doctor said nothing was going to work. So, but they're not God. So if you have had that diagnosis, or if you think that you have, depression that can't be treated, it's not true. Bring it to the Lord, and He'll guide you. And so I don't take any of those medications anymore. I'm not overcome by depression and anxiety anymore. But what I do is I make sure to do good self-care, to stay close to the Lord, to stay in the Word, because that is the bread and the water, the living bread and water that our soul needs to be healthy. And I was parched of that. Let's see. And that's not just volunteering at a church. I was volunteering at a church at this point in time, and I was still spiritually dry and starving because I was volunteering. I was doing things in the name of Jesus. I wasn't feeding my soul. I wasn't letting the Word transform me and allowing the Lord to clear sin out of my life, and abstaining from sin practices and getting emotionally healthy. We have to do all those things, and that gets you healthy from the inside out, and that will heal depression and anxiety. But what I wanted to say is I have experienced depression and anxiety at very high levels. But what for me is the self-care, walking close with the Lord, drinking plenty of water, and then supplementing with vitamins and minerals. The ones that I said to you guys are good ones. And so I know that they do help get our system kick-started, and help those natural ways that the Lord has put in us. These things will work with our natural system within us to help fight off the depression from the physical aspect. So there's physical, there's emotional, there's spiritual, thought patterns. Treating depression and anxiety, it's multifaceted. It's not one thing. So that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not a doctor. I'm not prescribing these things to you, but I'm saying it's proven. I've also seen other people who, like, I have one friend, and the vitamin D, that for her does it. She supplements with vitamin D, and that fights off depression coming and taking over her, because her body wasn't absorbing and making enough. Even spending a lot of time in the sun doesn't mean that your body is absorbing or using the vitamin D the way that it needs to. So I highly suggest I would try one or several of these, seeing, experimenting, seeing how they make you feel. Many people, but reading up on it too, many people are deficient in vitamin D, omega 3, 6, and 9, magnesium, and B12. If you start reading, you'll see many people are deficient in these things. And that's all we need, is we need those boosted in our system. We don't need all these antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. At the same time, there were times in the beginning of my diagnosis of depression when the depression medications really did help me. And so I would say there may be some people who, when you're going through this grieving process, you may need an antidepressant. What I would say is let that be a last resort, or go into it knowing that it's not going to be a permanent fix, because I believe that there are negative effects that come from long-term use of those, from my own experience and my own research, seeing other people's experiences and studies, etc. So take that to the Lord. You can take into account what I've shared with you about my experience and my learning, but ultimately take everything to the Lord. Okay, the last thing is talking about your thoughts and your feelings, but also talking about the loss that you're experiencing, whether it's a person that you're experiencing or a job loss or whatever it is that you are grieving over. Find a safe place or safe people that you can talk about it with. My family has been really good, like my husband and my children, my mom, other people who are close to me needing, like, there's a lot of things that I'm thinking about my dad right now, and I'm talking a lot more about him than I did before he passed away. And like at one point I was like, sorry, I know I'm talking so much, can I tell you something else? And my husband was like, tell me whatever you need to tell me, because if that's helping us process and heal, we need to get it out. And there are some people who have people around you who are discouraging you and saying, stop talking about it already, you should be over it already. Number one, I would say pray for them, that they'll have more compassion toward you, and ask the Lord to change their heart. Have a conversation with them and tell them how you need to talk about it and it helps you heal, etc. If they're not understanding, find someone else that you can talk to about it, like a counselor or a grief group. There's in-person grief groups. I recently joined one online on Facebook. Like I said, not necessarily as much even to talk, because my family is understanding in that way, but there are lots of groups that you can join, and the people understand because they've gone through the same or similar experience, and it really is helpful to talk about it. And also, so for me, I haven't posted a lot in the grief group, but what's been helping me is just reading other people's experiences and knowing, some people will be like, oh, it's sick that you're getting help, knowing that other people are suffering. Well, that's not what it is. It's the Lord created us to have relationship and communion and fellowship, and that's what it is there's people who are experiencing the same thing right along with you, and they can understand at the deepest level, or you can see what they're going through and you can relate to that, and there's healing in it. So whether there's something on YouTube or Facebook or something in person, see what is going to bring you comfort and healing in that way. Not to take the place of God in your healing process. He is number one. I'm going to keep emphasizing that. But there are lots of other ways that He uses people to help speak healing into our lives, or just be a listening ear, or even if you don't talk, just listening and knowing, like, like I'm doing on these videos, this is normal, this is normal, this is okay to do. Expect this, like, it's part of the process. So find people in your life, somehow the best way for you that will be supportive. So thanks for listening.